Hi, this is Mark Montgomery. I'm founder and CEO of Kyield. Welcome to our new blog at kyieldOS.com. It's actually a collection of articles going back many years in an upgraded blog format, new domain. Also wanted to talk a little bit about the recent article that I wrote. It's part of a paper, a private unpublished paper on the exponential improvement in productivity. It the sound of it may scare some people, but business leaders and finance, especially, understand the power of exponential or compounding growth. It's a very similar dynamic to what occurs with compounding interest over time, where the actual improvement in any given year may be minor, but it's extremely important in finance, for example, or investing, to outproduce the average inflation rate. So I wrote this article recently that's on the blog, at the top of the blog, with a graph showing the difference between three different organizations and their outcomes. In the middle line follows compounded interest following the targeted inflation rate by the Fed at 2%. And over a course of years, it essentially stays same in terms of real dollars, today's real dollars. And then the bottom line is a organization that's falling behind. Now, this is a financial and numerical in dollars representation of what occurs with productivity. Just as an example to show what occurs. And the bottom line, the organization is not really falling very fast on a productivity basis each year, but over the course of a decade, 10 years, it has fallen way behind. I forget what the actual dollar numbers that I calculated were, but it's very dramatic. Starts at $100 million basis over 10 years. The slower productivity that's losing value fairly rapidly in a compounding fashion relative to the inflation rate in real dollars winds up with substantially lower than $100 million at the end of 10 years. Now, mind you, this is not inflation adjusted. So it is in 10 years down the road, if we hit the 2% targeted rate, you can imagine the value of that lower dollar rate. So this organization probably won't even survive over the 10-year period in the real world, especially in a private company, the way it usually occurs. And usually they take on debt. There's financial engineering, there's buyouts, there's other things that occur long before that. However, there are many companies along that trajectory. There's also many nations and states and cities of public entities on that trajectory. So it's certainly worth looking at and understanding. Now, on the top line, I show a company that's experienced, I think, something like 12% increase in productivity, which may sound ridiculous, off the charts. It's actually not. The leaders in productivity today, represented in dollars, are actually increasing at an exponential rate much, much higher than that. The top tech leaders, for example, are improving. They're not the only ones, though. There's an exponential improvement in productivity in many traditional firms that are applying advanced technology, especially in terms of automation, semi-automated process, what we call artificial intelligence systems, which of course are especially what Kyield OS is. And so that article, take a look at it. It's a very important topic, on the minds actually of many, and it helps in a number of ways. Now, of course, to execute that, there's lots of different ways, and companies do it, but the most important takeaway I think any CEO, CFO can understand, board at this point, is that the low-hanging fruit in AI systems in the, let's call it the first 5 years of machine learning, where ROI and rapid improvement has been experienced for certain functionalities, autonomous cars being the most widely known. But we're seeing it in agriculture, in mining, every industry is seeing it. And if you are not employing these technologies, you will soon fall behind. It doesn't really matter whether it's a nation. The news, and one of the areas I focus on a lot recently, is the difference between China and the United States. China is actually adopting at a much faster rate than any other country in the world in some limited respects, but those are important. Since it's a communist dictatorship, they just order it done. They have a surveillance program for the entire nation and all the citizens that other nations won't allow. But that does provide the ability to collect massive amounts more data than probably any other entity on the planet, and allows them to experiment. And one of the interesting things about what China is doing that's raising a lot of concerns in Washington and other countries in Europe at the moment is the partnerships with the civilian or private companies, or so-called private companies, these strategic relationships between the government. And of course, they don't have it. It's very different than what occurs in Europe and the U.S. But this is why it's so important. The productivity, especially in nations with high debt levels, one of the few things that economists all agree on. And there's not even universal agreement on this issue. But productivity, everyone argues about the way it's collected and the way you can come with the numbers. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real productivity, and this article and the graph are just a representation, an example of it. But in terms of real productivity improvement, that's how we survive, and that's how we increase the lifestyle, the quality of life from one generation to the next. It's essentially an attempt to measure progress in terms of economic terms. The drivers of the productivity, however, are essentially innovation. It's technology, starting way back from Neanderthal days. The ability to carry water, the first irrigation in farming and agriculture, the wheel, combustion engine. So these radical productivity improvements throughout history are very important. And so that bigger picture is critically important. But when you look at an individual organization within the competitive environment that you're dealing with, if you're dealing, for example, with competing with an Amazon, or worried about a company like that, Amazon is a native network employing many of these technologies, and so despite the fact, yes, they are customer centric, etc., but it's an organization-wide system that they're running that is in some respects comparable to what our Kyield OS is. I don't think they actually have what we have in the Kyield OS, but it is a native system, and that's one of the reasons why they're experiencing the productivity that they are. Similarly with Google, years ago in the search engine, a native search engine that grew and grew at just astronomical levels, productivity increases. So you get these, they're relatively short periods where you can gain the really insane levels of productivity improvement. But the important thing is to be able to, if you're any kind of organization, to be able to at least remain competitive, if not gain on the competitive advantage through the productivity improvements. And that's essentially what we offer with the Kyield OS, is a organization-wide operating system that is enhanced with artificial intelligence. In fact, it's classified as an AI system, and the core patent is. Provides governance for the entire system. It is tailored to each entity automatically, semi-automatically. It generates the type of data in the structure that you need to be able to optimize the machine learning and other AI algorithmics that we use in the system. There's prevention, there's creativity enhancement, there's significant productivity enhancement. And that's tailored to each entity, right down to the individual. So for healthcare applications, for knowledge worker applications, any of those applications, doesn't matter what the specific career is or target is or what the project is. It tailors based on the data for the individual workflow. There's also built-in privacy and controls that control the dynamics. And Kyield never claims ownership of the data. This data remains with the customer. So that is the big story in 2018 is that the evidence is very clear that you need, at least in many industries, and it's beginning to expand into all sectors, all industries, all nations, no matter what industry you're in, you're going to need a organization-wide machine learning, AI enhanced, augmented productivity boost to remain competitive. Otherwise, your economic entity is going to fall behind. That is just absolutely the evidence that we're seeing. The good news is at the same time, the reason why we know this is because companies are doing it and they're demonstrating, they're proving the ability to do that. And those technologies and those systems like ours are now available to others. So that is the key. Organization-wide systems, be very careful about which system that you choose. There is a media reported and repeated myth that AI systems are all alike. Couldn't be further from the truth. The languages used between the different AI systems are very different. If you take Google, for example, in their platform, in their cloud platform for developers, it's quite different than Azure for Microsoft. Both have advantages, both have weaknesses. Again, it's quite different, again, from AWS. So the systems, our system is actually for networks, a native design from the theory of yield management of knowledge, right through to today, an over 20-year period. And its design, it was free of any conflicts, any business model conflict, any legacy conflict. All we did was focus on what is possible to deliver the most value to customers for their specific mission and purpose, their goals at the individual level, at the business unit level, at the organization level, ecosystem level. And so to the best of my knowledge, it's the most advanced and successful in doing that in the world. And so that's the message I wanted to leave with you today, is that 2018 is the year we have multiple large organizations moving forward in these organization-wide plans. They're very carefully planned over multi-years. It's business to business, business to business to consumer. And the last thing in conclusion I'll leave you with is that on this blog, for the first time, we're publicly detailing some information, for example, on our knowledge currency, which has been our R&D all along for almost the entire 20-plus year voyage, that is very important in terms of building. It provides options in compensation and trading and selling and protecting intellectual property and assets, trade secrets, etc., digital products. That is a very interesting product that's mature now. And there's the Helmcat and our other products, Dana, that you'll want to take a look at. As always, feel free to ping me. We can set up a phone conference. We can, in some cases, set up a personal meeting and discuss in more detail. We usually, once we get to a certain level, we have to execute NDAs pretty tight with customers, but that's routine with any of these advanced technologies. So thanks for your time and interest, and have a great day.